Be an island. The Buddhist practice of inner peace. Ayya Khema. Forward by Sandy Boucher. Forward. In the great adventure of Buddhism's coming to the West, one of the most fascinating developments has been its meeting with feminism. The relationship that developed between the two, while sometimes thorny, has enriched both endeavors immeasurably. Sister Ayya Khema, one of the first generation of Western women teachers, contributed powerfully to this conjunction. An American citizen born in Northern Europe, she will be remembered most vividly for her championing the cause of the Buddhist nuns. Ayya Khema was a strong, independent woman who survived early hardship. As a German Jewish child in the Second World War, she knew prejudice, imprisonment, and the death of her father. As a married woman, she worked a farm in Australia while raising her children. She then founded a Theravada Buddhist forest monastery there and took the robes, shaving her head and donning the brown cloth of a renunciant. Her new name, Khema, had belonged to a nun alive during the Buddha's lifetime, who had been known for her great insight and verbal ability and had been cited by the Buddha as providing a standard for right conduct. Ayya Khema radiated confidence. Her being a woman never impeded her study and practice of Dhamma. She penetrated deeply into the practice and communicated the fruits of her insights with great clarity in her public talks and private instruction. That her own Theravada tradition denied her full ordination, that nuns in Southeast Asian countries were neglected and ill-served by their tradition, these injustices turned Ayya Khema into an activist. She did not choose the battle, but self-respecting as she was, she stood up for her own dignity and that of all women. As a sincere practitioner and a powerful spokesperson, she became one of the Western Buddhist teachers who had truly made a difference in this century. To be involved in the publishing of this book takes me back to another book preparation 12 years ago on Parapapadua Nuns Island in Ratgama Lake in Sri Lanka. In the damp tropical heat, I sat on a veranda surrounded by extravagant jungle vegetation and pored over the proofs of a book of Ayya's Dhamma talks to be published by a group of Sri Lankan donors. That rustling in the underbrush, I knew, signaled the progress of a giant monitor lizard lumbering past. The wild screeches piercing the air came from brilliantly hued birds perched in the low trees. Ayya Khema, stout in her brown robe, her head shaved clean, leaned over me to confer on some very strange wording that could only have been produced by a typesetter to whom the English language was an exotic challenge. Ayya would frown as she concentrated on the mingled phrase, and then, often as we sorted it out, our consternation would dissolve into laughter. My proofreading occupied only a few hours of each day. Up at 4 a.m., we Anagarikas, 8 precept nuns, donned our white robes, lit our kerosene lanterns, and trudged in thick darkness to the top of the island's solitary hill to enter the Bhavana Sala, or meditation hall. At the front of the room, we could barely discern the immobile form of Ayya Khema, deep in meditation. Gradually, brightness gathered in the room, birds awoke, announcing their presence with cascades of sound, and Ayya became visible, her head raised, face suffused with joy, a lightness like a benediction. Thus our days began and progressed through sutta study with Ayya and a single ceremonially served meal, sometimes brought to us by the villagers on the lake shore, sometimes prepared for us by our Sri Lankan cook. As the sun fell behind the tall trees bordering the lake, we again sat in meditation and listened to Ayya expound upon the aspect of the Buddha's teachings. Then we ended our day with chanting. Ayya's voice strongly guided us, first through the unfamiliar polysyllables, then through the English translations. We chanted, for instance, "Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world." One of Ayya's great contributions in her founding of Buddhist centers. As one student put it, "You know how when the baby Buddha walked, at each step a lotus sprang up? Well, everywhere Ayya Khema goes, a meditation center springs up." She began in 1978 with the forest monastery Wat Buddha Dhamma in New South Wales, Australia. Then in the 80s in Sri Lanka, she formed the International Buddhist Women's Center and founded the nunnery Papadura Nuns Island at the invitation of the Sri Lankan government. She did so in order to provide Western women with a Buddhist monastic experience in a Buddhist country, to offer us silence, safety, concentration, inner spaciousness. With her German students, she created Buddha House, and as her death neared, she established Metta Vihara, a monastery to accommodate both men and women, the first Theravada monastery in Germany. I savored the peace and enclosure of monastic life, yet she was willing in the middle of our rains retreat to leave Papadua Nuns Island and fly to the United States to speak on a panel on women in Buddhism at a prestigious academic Buddhist Christian convocation. When she returned to the island at our request, she shared the tape of her panel with us. On the tape, I spoke briefly and concisely about the situation of women in Buddhist traditions. She told the truth in a blunt, no-nonsense terms. And I remember thinking how extremely radical and brave she was in doing so. But it was in the question and answer period that she captivated us and provoked a roar of approving laughter. A male questioner wondered in a tone intended to trivialize and dismiss the whole subject of the panel why there should be a separate panel comprised only of women to address the issue of women in Buddhism. Why couldn't the topic be incorporated into the other discussions? One panelist began a tempered, careful response, and then Ayya's voice cut in, its tones balanced, just on the edge of annoyance. Perhaps the questioner should ask instead, she suggested, why almost every one of the other panels at the conference was composed exclusively of men and excluded all concerns specific to women. That would be a more productive inquiry, she concluded. And the subject was closed. One could only imagine the look on the man's face as the room erupted in applause and amusement. Ayya did not dislike individual men. Indeed, she had loyal male students, but she hated the hardship visited on women by the male supremacy endemic to Buddhism. Quick-witted, strongly grounded in what she knew, and unafraid, Ayya Khema could be formidable. Her forthrightness could cause friction with students and associates. Women who came to the Nuns Island wanting a warm, motherly mentor instead found a strong exponent of the Dhamma, a demanding teacher, and a consistent spiritual companion. Ayya Khema did not hesitate to speak her mind and assumed that we novices could handle what came our way and stay focused on our practice. Some people found Ayya Khema's manner authoritarian and brusque, and at times people's feelings were hurt by her treatment of them. I believe Ayya Khema was not so much interested in personality, her own or anyone else's. She focused always on the goals of liberation and equality, and she emphasized the necessity to cleave to practice. Sometimes this prevented her from attending to the complexity of human relationships and opening to others' limitations and perspectives. She was flawed, as we all are. At the same time, she lived a life of immense value to others. Ayya Khema taught often in the United States, particularly in California, where one of her daughters lived. I first met her at Dhamma Dena, the meditation center in the Mojave Desert, headed by Ruth Dennison. Years after my stay on the Nuns Island, I sat with Ayya Khema in Santa Fe, New Mexico, at Green Gulch Farm in California. During this time, she was establishing a center in Germany, and she regularly went to Europe to teach. Often she spoke at the conferences and events sponsored by Sakidahita, an international association of Buddhist women, which she had helped to found. This human life is short, Ayya reminded us, and the priority is to get on with the practice. She embodied the Theravadan concept that the teachings matter, not the teacher. This insistence upon the message rather than the messenger informs Ayya Khema's many books, which have been published in English and German and translated into numerous other languages. They are all, with the exception of a recently published autobiography, collections of her Dhamma talks. Her genius as a teacher lay in her ability to present the essence of the Buddhist teachings in simple, accessible prose. This she did without notes or sources of any kind, quoting frequently from the suttas, speaking distinctly in a strong voice, as her large eyes assessed her audience. She was an impressive, inspiring exponent of the timeless wisdom of the Buddha's teachings. Her printed talks, including the ones in this volume, reflect her conviction and clarity. In 1988, at the Chinese Sai Lai Temple near Los Angeles, Ayya Khema received full ordination in the nun's lineage that extends back to the Theras, the enlightened women ordained by the Buddha himself. Ordination within this Chinese lineage in most cases is not accepted by the Southeast Asian Theravada Sanghas of monks, Ayya's tradition. But it was the only ordination open to her. One can argue that ordination is an external gesture that is meaningless in terms of actual spiritual attainment. But Ayya Khema understood its importance for the validation of her own and other women's efforts. Women so utterly committed to the path of Buddhist renunciation deserve to be recognized by the worldly establishment of their tradition. Over the years, Ayya Khema spoke up for ordination of Theravada nuns on several continents and in countless gatherings, great and small. She pointed out that without full ordination, the nuns are, particularly in the eyes of Asian communities, spiritual non-entities, not deserving of material support, proper training in Dhamma, nor the respect accorded the monks. As so visible a spokeswoman, Ayya drew much critical fire, yet she never sacrificed her convictions in order to be accepted by the Southeast Asian Buddhist establishment. She will be best remembered for this campaign she waged. Her name and her efforts are known throughout the Buddhist world, wherever there are women in robes. Indeed, the changes in attitude and behavior toward nuns that have come about, still partial and gradual in many areas, but happening nonetheless, are the result of the activism and strong inspiration of Ayya Khema and a few other valiant, determined female renunciants. Her example and her message have kindled a light in the hearts of countless women who had been inured to second-class status and official neglect, and showed them a way to express their full humanity. Nothing could be more essentially Buddhist than spiritual equality, regardless of gender. Ayya Khema knew that in challenging the establishment, she expressed the deeper truth of Buddhist teachings. In almost 15 years I knew Ayya Khema, my respect for her grew. Her fidelity to her chosen path never faltered. Her mistakes were honest ones, her limitations no worse than mine, her strengths far exceeding any I could imagine possessing. Remembering her now, I last saw her dying of cancer, yet fully alive and focused on her task. I realized my respect for her had deepened to love. She was a woman of great heart and vision, and unshakable courage. She was one of Buddha's lions. May her roar echo in these pages and out across the world to generations of followers of the way to come. Sandy Busher, November 1998. Preface. Before the Buddha died, 2,500 years ago, he gave a last discourse. This talk is recounted in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the Great Passing Discourse, and is preserved in the Pali Canon, the sacred books of Buddhism. During his ministry of 45 years, the Buddha had taught all that was necessary to reach the goal of liberation. In this last phase of his life, his primary concern was to impress on his disciples the need to put those same teachings into practice. In the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, when Ananda, his cousin and faithful attendant, voices his hope that the Buddha will give some last instructions to the community of monks and nuns, the Buddha tells him that he has withheld nothing, with the closed fist of a teacher who keeps some things back. And he emphasizes that his disciples need not depend on him for leadership. Therefore, Ananda, be islands unto yourselves, refuges unto yourselves, seeking no external refuge, with the Dhamma as your island, the Dhamma as your refuge. He then goes on, those disciples of mine, Ananda, who now or after I am gone, abide as an island unto themselves, having the Dhamma as their island and refuge. It is they who will become the highest, enlightened, if they have the desire to learn. The 24 talks in this book are given in the spirit of the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, and are all aimed at our own practice. Having the Buddha's words, they are based on his discourses and his answers to questions. The first chapter helps us understand what it means to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. The second chapter begins with an expression of homage and trust in the Dhamma, and goes on to describe the inner opening of the heart and mind we need to seek no other refuge. Both chapters appear at the beginning of the book as an offering, which we may use or not as we see fit. Having finished the book, we may return to them and find them more meaningful. Perhaps we will find only a few of the other chapters helpful at the present moment, but that too will be a great opening nonetheless, because the Dhamma will have become part of our inner life and can grow and expand until it becomes all of us. My thanks go to all the nuns, anakarikas, and the lay men and women who have listened time and again to my expositions on the Buddha's teachings. Without them, these talks would not have happened, and this book would not be possible. A very special thank you to my friends who continued understanding and generosity whose continued understanding and generosity have supported my work and the publication of this book. Those who typed the manuscript from tapes made during the talks have been given freely of their time, energy, and love to the propagation of the Dhamma. May everyone connected with this joint undertaking reap the excellent karma caused by their gift. May this book contribute a happiness and joy in the hearts of all its readers. Ayya Khema, Buddha House, Germany, December 1995.